Good morning. This is the text about Buddhism, the life of Siddhartha, which you should be recording on the graphic organizer / visual note-taking tool that you have in front of you, or it's on the back table. So for each picture, like this picture, should be included, and you should write a caption. So for this first one, I wrote "A Prince is Born," and then taking notes around it, and you should be able to also see this in the video, or in the PowerPoint. Please make sure that you pause the video so you can write down your notes. Here we go. 16.2, Prince Siddhartha's birth. Prince Siddhartha was born about 563 BCE in the northern part of India near the Himalayan mountains. His father, Sudona, was a powerful king. His mother was the beautiful Queen Maya. One night before her son was born, the queen had a dream, and in the dream, she was carried high over the Himalayas to a silver mountain and sat on a silver couch. A white elephant with 6 tusks walked around her and then stuck her right side. The king and queen asked the Brahmins, Hindu priest, to explain her dream. "You are carrying a child who will be a great man," they told the queen. The Brahmins declared that the prince's future held 2 possible paths. As a prince, he could rule the universe, but if he left the royal life to see the suffering in the world, he would become a Buddha, one who is enlightened. The prince gave birth to Prince Siddhartha in a garden. Stories say that after the prince's birth, a soft, warm rain of heavenly flowers fell on the baby and his mother. The infant prince looked a few years old and could already walk and talk. Siddhartha began his remarkable life by taking a few steps and declaring, "I am the leader of the world and the guide to the world." So if you need to, pause to write that information down. Next section, the prince's royal life. Prince Siddhartha wanted his son to be a great and powerful ruler. He was worried about the Brahmin's prediction. If the prince saw the world suffering, he might give up his royal duties to seek a spiritual path. The king decided to protect his son from this horror of the world. He raised the prince in a world of perfect wealth and beauty. He provided his son with only the finest gardens, houses, education, and food. Servants took care of the prince's every need, from washing his clothes to playing music for his amusement. The prince enjoyed his easy life, yet he was always curious about the world outside the palace walls. Some days he would sit under a rose apple tree and think about the world beyond his reach. At the age of 16, Prince Siddhartha married a beautiful young noblewoman. The wedding feast lasted 7 days and 7 nights, and for 12 years the couple lived together in perfect peace, enjoying the prince's many palaces. And when Siddhartha turned 29, they had a son. After Siddhartha became a father, the king gave him more freedom to travel outside the royal palaces. During his trip, the prince discovered 3 forms of suffering. On his first trip, the prince and his chariot driver saw a thin man who walked with the aid of a stick. "Why does that man look so terrible?" the prince asked. His driver replied that the man was old, and he told the prince that everyone's body weakens as it ages. On the second trip, the prince and his driver saw a man crying out in pain on the ground. "What is the matter with that poor man?" the prince asked, and the driver explained that the man was sick. And on the third trip, the prince saw a group of people walking slowly down the road, and the people carried a figure wrapped in white cloth. "Death came for this man," Siddhartha's driver said quietly. "One day it will come for you, too." The prince was deeply troubled by his discovery of aging, sickness, and death, and unable to sit at home with his thoughts, he set out a 4th time, and this time he met a man who was glowing with inner peace and calm. The man was an ascetic. An ascetic is someone who gives up worldly pleasures such as possessions, fine clothes, money, and even shelter. "How can you sit so peacefully when there is so much suffering around you?" the prince asked the man. And the ascetic replied, "To be free of suffering, one must give up the desires, pleasures, and comforts of the world, and find peace by helping others find peace." The prince becomes an ascetic. Prince Siddhartha's experience with suffering changed him forever, and suddenly his royal life seemed empty. He wanted to find the happiness and peace the ascetics had found. Siddhartha decided to give up his old life and find enlightenment. Becoming enlightenment meant finding deep truth and being free of suffering. One night the prince asked the faithful driver to take him to the forest, and at the edge of the dark woods, Siddhartha removed his royal robes, sandals, and jewels. He cut off his hair with a knife, and he put on his simple robe and kept only a small bowl for alms or gifts of food. Wishing his driver farewell, Siddhartha began his life as an ascetic. Siddhartha met other ascetics as he wandered the forest and fields, and like him, they wanted to understand the nature of the world. They believed they could reach enlightenment through meditation. While meditating, the ascetics sat quietly and focused their mind on spiritual questions. Siddhartha quickly became an expert at meditation. The ascetics also denied their bodies many basic needs. For example, they stayed up all night without sleeping. They sat in the hot sun without shelter. They held their breath for long periods of time. They also fasted or stopped eating for many days at a time. They hoped to find spiritual truth through self-denial. Siddhartha followed the way of the ascetics until he was pitifully thin from lacking food. Legend says he became so skinny he could touch his stomach and feel his backbone. Eventually, he became unhappy with this extreme way of living, and he had not yet found the key to enlightenment. The prince becomes the Buddha. Siddhartha had learned that giving up body pleasures did not bring enlightenment. He decided to balance himself between the extreme pleasures and pain. He would be neither a prince nor an ascetic. Instead, he would seek a middle path as a path to enlightenment. The prince's new way of thinking caused the other ascetics to leave him, but he was content to be alone. He was not yet enlightened, but he was on the right path. A full moon rose on Siddhartha's 35th birthday, and he bathed in the river and rested quietly in a grove of trees. And when he awoke, he had a strong feeling that he would soon become enlightened. Then a grass cutter gave him 8 handfuls of soft grass as a present. Siddhartha walked into it until he reached a tree that became known as the Bodhi or enlightenment tree. He placed the grass at the foot of the tree and sat down. He vowed to meditate under the tree until he reached enlightenment. While Siddhartha meditated, a wicked god, Mara, tried to frighten him. Then Mara tried to tempt him by sending 3 daughters, Discontent, Delight, and Desire. Siddhartha resisted them all. He meditated through the night about the nature of reality and how to reach nirvana or true happiness and peace. As the night went on, his mind filled with the truth he'd been seeking. He saw his past lives and the great cycle of rebirth. He saw the importance of karma. Eventually, he saw how to gain freedom from the endless cycle and so end all suffering. By morning, the young prince had become the Buddha, the awakened one, and he had reached enlightenment. The truth and that the Buddha discovered under the Bodhi tree are the basics of Buddhism. They are often called the 4 Noble Truths. The Buddha would spend the rest of his life sharing these truths with the people of India.